The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast, where we dive deep into the media industry headlines and dissect the digital disruption that diverges the masses into the new media counterculture and away from the media establishment. Here is the King of Podcasts. Time now for the Broadcasters Podcast. This is King of Podcasts here with you, and I'm kind of disappointed because the movies that I have left to watch this year are not many. And as I titled this show tonight, the box office is barren. There's just not many movies out. I mean, just this last weekend, there was nothing to go see. And it's funny that there are no new movies coming out this weekend that are really like stand out when Saturday is National Cinema Day. Now, if you haven't heard about this, you can actually go now to most AMC Regal Cinemas or AMC or Regal Cinemas, all the major theater chains. They're going to have tickets available, whichever format, IMAX, standard definition, 3D, whatever, RPX, XD, whatever there is, it'll be $3 a ticket. And they're going to have concession specials like small popcorn, small Coke, $5. Just dirt cheap for the movies. $3 tickets. They're going to have that going on this weekend. But if you had to go and look at what they had available in the theaters this weekend to go see, it's not much. Okay, for instance, for this weekend I have coming up, if I'm going to my Regal Cinema nearby, there's a couple of Indian movies, Bollywood movies. One movie called Gigi and Kate. I don't even know what that is. Then there's Hawa, which I believe is a Bollywood movie. The movie I'm going to go see this weekend is Honk for Jesus Save Your Soul, which is also available on Peacock. A reissue of Jaws 3D from 1984. Another Bollywood movie, Ranga Ranga Vaibhavaga. They're going to reissue a new version of Spider-Man No Way Home. You can also watch the 1958 classic movie, The Blob, is available this weekend. A Tamil or a Bollywood movie called Cobra. And then the movie that released last week, The Invitation. There's that. Oh, then 3,000 Years of Longing, Beast, which came out a few weeks ago, and Dragon Ball, Superhero, and Orphan First Kill, Fall, Top Gun Maverick, Bullet Train, DC League of Super Pets, Nope, Thor Love and Thunder, Minions, and the 40th anniversary of Star... Oh, well, no, that's it. That's not much else. There's not much of anything, to be honest. So, wow. Not a lot of movies to watch. That's even new, right? And that's the problem. We're looking right now, and there are no new movies to be spoken of that are really standing out on the release schedule when I look at it. Now, as for Gigi and Nate, which is coming out this weekend, I know nothing about this. I mean, there's some people in the cast, James Belushi and Diane Ladd and Marcia Gay Harden, but I haven't heard nothing about this movie. It looks like it's a movie about a monkey. So I don't even know what that's going to be about. That's a movie that's wide release. The re-release of Jaws, Honk for Jesus Save Your Soul. That's the only movie I'm going to go watch. That's the one I'm going to pick. And I watched 25 movies this year. 25 in 8 months. And I struggled to try to find movies to go watch, but there's just not much going on because we don't have many movies when it comes to superhero movies right now. Not until Black Adam. I've been waiting for some movies to come out that are a bit of the independent route. Of which I caught a couple of movies this year, The Outfit and Emily the Criminal, which were really good. Standout movies. And I had to continue to look, and there's just not much there. Like, there's Barbarian that's coming up next weekend, and Medieval. Medieval I know is a pretty interesting, it's like a medieval piece. The kind of Game of Thrones kind of feel to it. And then I'm looking at the news about the movie coming up for Barbarian, which I did see a trailer for. a young woman books a rental home. So like, oh, this is like a Airbnb nightmare, right? When she arrives late at night, she discovers the house is double booked. A strange man's already staying in there. Against her better judgment, she decides to spend the evening, but soon discovers there's a lot more to fear than just the unexpected house guest. So it's a horror movie. And I'm not big into horror movies, but they have that coming out. And if I look at the rest of the schedule, that's September 9th. That's in 2 weeks. It's in a week. Clerks 3 will come out. I'll be all over that. And The Woman King, which I'll probably go ahead and watch as well, with Viola Davis. That looks interesting to me. But really, all those widescreen releases that we had at the beginning of the year, gone. There were so many that were scheduled. Like if I go back, and I got to go back and look at the archives, the Internet Archive, and see if there's anything that was said about what they had here of what movies were available before all these major changes, if I can look at it. But before I go and do that, I want to make sure just to give the heads up. Listen, website is broadcasterspodcast.com. I also should make mention of that I have 2 other shows that I host here on the network. The Wrestling is Real podcast, which is always something I've enjoyed. I've been doing it for almost 10 years. So if you like to hear anything about the world of World Wrestling Entertainment, AEW, and all the major professional wrestling aspects, there is that show I have for all of you. You can find that show, wrestlingisreal.com, or there's a link on the broadcasterspodcast.com page. You can look for that there. This week, I talked about lonely single men and the women who have turned them off to relationships. I talk about dating, young culture, sex and dating relationships on my Depraved and Debaucherous program. Sorry, I meant to say that before. But yes, I have another program besides Wrestling is Real called Depraved and Debaucherous. You can find that show at ddradio.live or look for a link here on the Broadcasters Podcast website. I got that there for you too. So if I go back, let's say I want to look back at March of this year. Let me go back for a snapshot of what was in March of this year and what the schedule actually had for September. And let's see how much they've actually changed that was coming up. Here's what's going on. So in September, they had loads of widescreen movies coming out. You had Dark Harvest and Salem's Lot. Those are no longer here. They got moved out. Then you had Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. That got pushed. Distant and The Woman King. Woman King got pushed back. Don't Worry, Darling would have been scheduled for September 23rd, but right now, it's not coming out. Well, no, it is September 23rd. It's stated. Where's that? And then Puss in Boots, The Last Wish would have been September 23rd, and that got pushed. And that, I believe, is at Christmas time, correct? Yes, December 21st. And let me tell you, when you look at what's going on for Christmas time, it is dead right now. Really dead. When we looked at the release schedule back in December, or for the fall this year, October 14th, Halloween ends, and Black Adam is still in its current place, October 21st. You also had Tickets to Paradise, an untitled Bee Gees movie. The Amsterdam movie would be November 4th, which I believe it's still, or no, it got moved up, right? Amsterdam's now October 7th. So they actually pushed that up, which was nice. Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. That's the next big one after Black Adam. That's the last Marvel movie of the year. And that's November 11th. And then we get a few more movies after that. A few things have changed up. Wild Wild Crocodile, She Said, 13 Lives. Creed 3 will be on Thanksgiving weekend with The Fabelmans and Strange World. Violent Night will be December 2nd. Avatar 2, December 16th. Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Well, that got pushed off, right? That's not even at the end of the year. No, that was the movies we had back in March. Now, and actually fall 2022, we're expecting Knives Out 2 to come out, but that didn't happen. So what do we have left instead? Okay. Halloween Ends is still there where it's at. Black Adam, Ticket to Paradise are still there. Pray for the Devil is October 28th. Nothing widescreen for November 4th. November 11th, we got Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and Armageddon Time. She Said is November 18th. And then Thanksgiving weekend, we have Bones and All, Devotion, Strange World, and The Fabelmans. Violent Night, December 2nd. House Party, December 9th. Avatar December 16th, and then for Christmas time, I Want to Dance with Somebody and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. It's barren. Do you understand me? Nothing out to watch whatsoever. And this is leading to a number of stories that came out this week addressing the issue. Number one, Variety.com talks about how to fix the movie theater supply problem. They talk about the summer season, how things did really do well. You had Maverick, Top Gun Maverick, Jurassic World Dominion, Doctor Strange 2, Minions Rise of Gru. But now, theater owners are concerned about the new releases, the amount there are in the coming months. And they should be even more concerned about what will happen next year. There are a lot of blockbusters next year scheduled. You have the third Guardians of the Galaxy movie, Indiana Jones 5, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, but the number of films being released will still be below pre-pandemic levels. Now, for the first 6 months of 2023, there are expected to be 40 wide theatrical releases slated. That's down 37% for 2019. At the same time, in 2019, they had 63 movies widescreen release in theaters. And it's staying that way for the near future. Like, there's just not movies coming out like there was. In the entire year of 2018, they had 142 widescreen releases, which there were movies that were going out to at least 1,000 theaters. 128 in 2019, and of course, pandemic came in, but we have never recovered. At the moment right now, we're getting about half the movies we would normally get. And that's also because of the streaming that is contributing to this. So there could be movies that will be added to the schedule in the months ahead, but unlikely there are any major releases not currently on the slate that will get pushed up. So next year's also going to look tough. It's bad news for theater owners increasingly facing periods of feast or famine based on the number of tentpole films being released each month. So now you got Warner Brothers will have Black Adam, Marvel with Wakanda Forever. And this year they've done a thing where some of those superhero movies, people don't want to be around that. Like, that's part of the thing too. That was a new trend this year. When Batman came out, there were not any movies really to go watch for the entire month of March. And then I look now, let's go back to the start of the year. Okay. So far, they say the top 10 highest grossing films make up 64% of the domestic box office total this year. Maverick taking home as much as a fifth of all the money being made in the movie theaters. With fewer movies and less money flowing into the box office overall, each individual film carries more weight, more than some are simply ill-equipped to support. And there was a research note that came out that the almost complete non-performance of attempted alternative programming like Firestarter and Men, concluding it's not clear that adding more films to the release lineup would be terribly additive to the overall box office. Yeah, there's not enough good movies to keep people to come into the movies in general. But we have mid-budget hits that are still happening, and they're still making good money. Elvis, The Lost City, and Nope each cost between $65 and $85 million, and they all grossed more than $100 million domestically. So they made their money. The Black Phone also made $90 million. The top grossing films so far this year: Top Gun Maverick, Doctor Strange, Jurassic World Dominion, The Batman, Minions Rise of Gru, Thor Love and Thunder, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Uncharted, Elvis, Lightyear. Those all made over $100 million, over $110 million, with Top Gun Maverick making the most at $676 million domestically. And they blow everybody else out of the water. Meanwhile, there were other movies they had this year that they made recent money. Nope. Lost City, Bad Guys made $96.7 million. Fantastic Beasts made $95.9 million, but also should have done better. The Black Phone made $88 million. Sing 2, $86 million. The reboot of Scream, $81 million. Where the Crawdad Sing made $74 million. The horribly panned Morbius, which deservedly so, for Marvel, $73 million. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, a quiet hit, $68 million made domestic. There you go.
Now, part of the thing that's going on that we're noticing is that there are a number of movies that the movie studios are not willing to put out to exhibition because they're just going to stream. Now, we know that certain movies are not doing that anymore because Warner Brothers themselves, they realize, you know what? We better not do that simultaneous streaming anymore because that sucks. So they decided, no, we're going to put the 45-day exhibition window back in front, which means that movies can't go to streaming for 45 days. Peacock, I think, is 30 days. But even now, Peacock is putting out Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul simultaneous, I believe. You're going to be able to see it on Peacock at the same time it goes to the theaters. And some other movies, they don't go out for 60 days, which was what was before. So there are movies that could have gone up and out to theaters, but they were chosen not to. For instance, Prey is the newest addition to the Predator franchise. It was streamed on Hulu and got its biggest premiere ever for any movie or TV show. And apparently horror or intellectual property-based horror, like legacy brands, right? Genre horror, like Scream, did gross over $80 million. Now, Prey was streamed directly on Hulu by Disney to prevent the film from streaming to HBO Max as well under the terms of an old deal for Fox releases. So they said that it amounts to cutting off a potentially lucrative revenue stream out of spite. So how much financial value is Prey really going to generate just on Hulu? Remember, some of these movies, they would make a good cut of money and then go to streaming after that. If the opportunity is there and they have the budget and they put that much budget into a movie, then why not put it out there in the first place? Like, it's not the same issue as Batgirl being pushed out, not being pushed out because it was going to go to HBO Max. Like, they're not even going to try to put it in the theaters, but they put $90 million into the movie. Like, that's the other thing. So some of the movies that could have gone out to theaters, well, Netflix, they have their own source of income if they would have theatrical plays of their own. They had movies like The Gray Man, which had a pretty good cast, right? You had Ana de Armas, you had Chris Evans, and Ryan Gosling in it, right? There's a sequel for Knives Out, Glass Onion, and then Adam Sandler's recent movie on basketball called Hustle, which released in June. They could have all had theatrical potential if Netflix could have been bothered to mount serious big screen releases. For instance, if Adam Sandler puts out a good movie like Uncut Gems, which came out 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I forget what it was, people will still go to the movies if it's good. And so they say they should be bothered. Old revenue streams like home video and TV syndication are drying up. Wall Street is increasingly skeptical of all-in streaming, and it would behoove studios to rethink their strategies for films. Forcing theaters to continue to struggle for survivor isn't doing anyone any favors. And I agree. It's one of those things that it doesn't have to be this way. But for whatever reason, that's where we are. And now, because of the movie issues, you know what could be the number one movie in the box office this weekend? There is actually the thought that without any new major releases, Spider-Man's No Way Home Return could be the number one movie at the box office, which it was at the start of the year. And now it can be number one again because they're re-releasing it with more footage. And why are they re-releasing? Well, the movie that already made over $800 million in North America and $1.9 billion globally will re-release over Labor Day weekend with 11 minutes of extra footage. That's it. And you know what's going to happen? There will be enough people that are big Marvel Cinematic Universe fans. The MCU universe will probably come out to go see this movie again with the extra 11 minutes. I don't even know what the extra 11 minutes would be that would warrant a return back to the theater, but people are going to go. And they asked the question, why isn't the final stretch of summer, why is it that Spider-Man's re-release could be the number one movie in the box office this weekend? Well, the studios have all but abandoned the big screen in August after ticket sales rebounded at the start of popcorn season. And now the landscape's taken a drastic turn from dreary to downright desolate. So last week, the top box office movie was The Invitation, $6.8 million. The lowest place finish in more than a year. So, and that's pandemic, by the way. And by the way, The Invitation will likely drop 50 to 55% in its sophomore outing. 6.8 million is a bomb. Okay? I don't even know how much money this movie made, but let's just put this in perspective. What was the production budget on this movie? It was $10 million. Okay. But still, on a $10 million budget, it still didn't make its money on the first week. Unopposed. Unopposed. I mean, if you want to say, if you really want to go ahead and say that the competition of Bullet Train, which has been out for 4 weeks, Beast, which was out for 2 weeks, Top Gun Maverick, which has been out for 14 weeks. I mean, it's amazing that people went to see some of the movies they saw, and there's nothing left of these other movies that are worth watching. That's really bad. So more than 3,000 theaters, by the way, with this really dead season of movies. National Cinema Day is here for September 3rd, and movie tickets will be $3 on Saturday, less than the $9 average ticket price, and more than 3,000 theaters are going to participate in this discount day. One movie, the church satire Honk for Jesus Save Your Soul, is playing in a significant number of theaters, but it will also be debuting day and date on Peacock. I'm still going to go see it in the theater. I'm just going to. And cinema owners have almost gotten used to hybrid releases, but they still find it disappointing because there's serious star power. Jordan Peele, Daniel Kaluuya are producers in the film. Regina Hall, Sterling K. Brown are husband and wife of a church engulfed in a scandal. Like, I'm going to go see this in the theater. And how about this? Not only do we, as I just mentioned before, we have Spider-Man's No Way Home coming back to the original summer blockbuster. Then you have Jaws, that is also being re-released to 1,200 theaters over the weekend. And without much to show, theater owners have been busy booking screenings of Rogue One, a Star Wars story, which made $1 million from 255 theaters last weekend, and E.T., which made $35,000 from 95 cinemas last weekend. And this writer for Variety ends up and says, if Hollywood doesn't start releasing new movies soon, it may be time to bring back Casablanca. We're almost as bad as the pandemic, where they had a bunch of older movies that were just brought back, re-released again, just to fill the screens. But like I said, there's a lot of older movies out there if you want to go watch, but that's not going to work. There are just not a lot of new movies right now, and it's sad to see this state of affairs. But there's no answer for this. And part of the thing, too, is we know that with all the superhero movies, Marvel had their normal rollout of movies, and it's not like they're going to put out more because they have to fill the coffers of Disney Plus with content. And then the DCEU, which would have solved some of these problems, because we should have had this year. Remember the start of the year, we had that great promo, that big 2-minute ad for DC movies? Black Adam, The Flash, Batman, and Shazam, all coming out this year. There should have been 4 movies. We only got one of them. And that's with all the issues of the merger, Warner Brothers and Discovery. And Warner Brothers Discovery is still working on the next chief of the DCEU. So let's talk about the DCEU. There have been talks about who might be the executive that will become the new chief, like a Kevin Feige is to Marvel, who will be for what will be for DCEU. Well, right now, whoever has to come in has to go with a lot of damage. First of all, the fallout of the Batgirl movie, which the new CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, David Zaslav, is committed to making streaming movies for a price. And Batgirl, with its $90 million budget, was thought too expensive to fit nicely into that mold. And the film, sources said, wasn't in good shape to justify the $50 million needed to market and release in theaters. And Zaslav will tax write off this movie. So the next DCEU chief will have to restore relationships with talent who, for the next project, could go the way of Batgirl and get jettisoned. And they need to make sure they can get filmmakers, visionary writers, and talented stars to jump on board and be able to commit to these projects because they've burned some people now as a result. So there's new chiefs to Warner Brothers Pictures, Michael DeLuca, Pamela Abdi, that are trying to get the situation fixed up. They're trying to find a new project for Leslie Grace, the star of Batgirl, and the directors Bilal Fallah and Adil El Arbi. So they're trying to repair the relationships that are going on. The one bright side they really have right now is Joker Folie à Deux. Todd Phillips' follow-up to his $1 billion grossing is getting all started really well. You got Joaquin Phoenix, Lady Gaga, Matt Reeves will be directing. Matt Reeves is directing on a sequel to his blockbuster, The Batman, with Robert Pattinson. And also a spin-off TV series centering Colin Farrell's The Penguin, written by Lauren LaFranc. Reeves is also developing another spin-off set in the world of Arkham Asylum that is further off. Then you have the second season of Peacemaker from writer-director James Gunn, which is still said to be moving forward. The Harley Quinn animated series has been greenlit for another season, and live-action shows Titan and Doom Patrol are all premiering new seasons on HBO Max. And there are other projects like Constantine and Madame Xanadu shows in development by J.J. Abrams' Bad Robot Studio. Now, one of the other movies that might be another issue we know is Ezra Miller with The Flash. And the August 4th earnings call, Zaslav indicated he still planned on moving forward with the releasing of The Flash in the theaters, despite repeated alarming headlines about alleged abusive behavior by Ezra Miller, which continue to be clear in April 2020, months before The Flash ever started shooting. Ezra Miller has offered a public apology for his past behavior, says he is ongoing treatment for complex mental health issues. So Ezra Miller probably will not be part of the promotional rollout or dealing with this kind of thing at all. And it's an issue because The Flash, which every executive who has seen it will tell you is really good, is intended to clean up all the narrative threads left dangling by the DCU's stop and start approach to cinematic universe building, using time travel in the multiverse to reset the DC timeline from where it was in 2013 with Man of Steel and set it on a new course. If the film does come out, will the plan even hold, or will it be a swan song before a harder reset button is hit? Continuous ongoing problems here, huh? And then after The Flash goes out, then you have Aquaman 2, which was supposed to predate the film and now comes out after. There are related concessions to cinematic timeline adjustments and some ongoing tweaking as a result. Michael Keaton was supposed to return as Batman at the end of Aquaman 2, following the character's return to The Flash, but now Ben Affleck is slated to appear in the Atlanta set adventure. That may be one former Batman too many. And then they have to revive Superman, and there are schools of thought out there: bring back Henry Cavill as the Man of Steel, or move forward with a J.J. Abrams produced film that was supposed to have a script by Ta-Nehisi Coates that would have been the first to feature a black Superman. Or option 3, start from scratch and proceed with the Abrams Coates and Cavill version of Supers at the same time. Then there's also the thought about another Wonder Woman movie, a third one in the series, after the second one sputtered out with critics. That's because of the day and date, and plus, the story wasn't that good. Let's just say it like that. I love Wonder Woman. 1984, it did not live up to the original. The original was fantastic. They messed things up with 1984. I know what they were trying to do, but no. Pedro Pascal, no. I didn't like that villain role, and just what they did all together with Kristen Wiig, no, didn't work. And then you still have other movies that they're involving Gal Gadot once again. And then you have the Green Lantern, Green Arrow, Martian Manhunter, and other Justice Leaguers that are ready to be pushed into production and get projects greenlit. Studio insiders have said that Zack Snyder's Justice League should have never happened, that the unceasing online campaign to release the Snyder Cut, the 4-hour HBO Max feature, only further entrenched the vocal and extremely online Snyderverse fan base in opposition to the leadership of the studio in general and DC in particular. DC has to do a better job of cultivating the kind of compelling franchises that will enable them to build up the kind of passionate, engaged, and excited fan base, like a Marvel fan base, to drown out the haters. So that's what they got to figure out. But there's a lot of problems there. It's like one movie studio that could be releasing lots of good DC movies, at least 4 movies in exhibition, would also take some of the weight off. But they're not. And because of those movies that DC decided to push back, it makes the 2022 box office suffer. Because now we're kind of like dead in the water at summertime. Nobody else is moving their movies up in any kind of way or form when they wish they would. I mean, if it opens up the room for indie movies, come on, let's go. Get your movies up there and let's see what happens. Come on. Now, I want to move on to a couple other things here on the program that is not movie related. I have some other things to bring up here on the program about the royalty rates. Spotify, Apple, and other streamers now are setting the royalty rates with music publishers. The radio fight for royalty to be paid off to the music labels and to the musicians themselves. That's coming up. I'll talk about that. Plus some other things about podcasting, where things are, the plus and minuses, the listenership they're trying to reach, and where YouTube is now a threat to podcasting, things like that. That's all coming up here on the program. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and move along and talk quickly about the VMAs, which I did watch this year, more or less, and it turned out okay. It wasn't that bad. Almost 4 million viewers this time around through all their collective channels. And the producers spoke with Billboard about the ratings went up this year because all the stars aligned. 12 cable channels showed the program, and it went up 3%. And so some of the highlights they had was Fergie's surprise appearance with Jack Harlow, Taylor Swift's headline-grabbing announcement of her upcoming album at the show, Harry Styles, they wanted to do a remote performance from Madison Square Garden to go along with Bad Bunny coming from Yankee Stadium, but they got Bad Bunny and it was a big moment there. The producers mentioned how they wanted to be super focused on putting a lineup together that served the widest demographic, which they did. There was talk about this being the most diverse and global VMAs ever, which it was. Anita, Bad Bunny, J Balvin, all representing Latin America, Blackpink performing on the American Awards show. They already had their performance of Pink Venom get over 15 million views on YouTube. Then the legacy of MTV with LL Cool J and the Red Hot Chili Peppers performing or appearing. And then things that worked out as well, where Nicki Minaj decided to go and perform Super Freaky Girl, which already hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 the week before. And so that's what they said, that, you know, things worked out. People were wanting to connect with other people that are connected to music. And you actually see real performances, which is like the BET Awards do so well. There's not enough of that going on, where I wish all the musicians out there would actually perform live. And we can watch them on TV more often and not just have to go to the concerts. It's a lost art. Let's just say it like that. So this is another story that I was actually thinking about putting up as the headline on the program, but the movie theater stuff I thought was more important. Spotify, Apple, and other streamers are setting their royalty rates with music publishers through 2027. The agreement, which will be submitted to the Copyright Royalty Board. Song owners will now receive a royalty of 15.35% over the next 5 years. So it's a significant. It's up from 15.1%. Now, they were asking for 20%, but it's a small bump, but it's still a bump nevertheless. And this is going through Spotify, Amazon, Google, and YouTube all together, having to go ahead and put as part of this now. The broadcasters are going to have to deal with the same thing, much like the streamers, but it's a much different story. Because I think there's still a thought that the radio industry is going to still have to put a lot more money in than it has. Because there's only going to be so much that comes in through streaming, but it's going to be through volume that makes their money. Meanwhile, radio is a different story. It's much more by rate, right? Or just by scale. So the radio industry did get a victory in Washington, D.C. Lobbying efforts have led to the addition of 20 names to a House resolution opposing the creation of a radio performance royalty, much like what these streamers are dealing with. And that's what's trying to be happening right now. It means the majority of voting members of the House said they would not support a move capping off a lobbying effort that began more than a year ago by the National Association of Broadcasters, which is always the one thing that happens with the NAB. They're always involved in this, and, the music labels, the musicians, the artists, the people that provide the music to these stations, they get screwed. So I left the article in the show description if you want to look at the names that are in favor or not. But here's the actual act. It's a Local Radio Freedom Act. It has bipartisan support. It recognizes the mutually beneficial relationship between local radio and the recording industry, including the free publicity and promotion that performers receive and use to sell music and concert tickets, and that changing the law to create a new performance right for AM/FM would lead to thousands of local radio stations suffering severe economic hardship if any new fees imposed. And rather than shy away from the fact that resolution is not a new idea, it embraces its legacy. For nearly a century, Congress has repeatedly rejected calls by the recording industry to impose a performance fee on local radio stations for simply playing music on the radio. Okay. But this would be the key that would pick the lock. This would be the piece that would make the radio industry crumble. These corporate companies, iHeartMedia, Citadel, Odyssey, now getting rumors of a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and David Feld has to come in and start shutting down those rumors, right? All these radio companies that are being held by hedge funds, by private equity firms, they, of course, don't want to be a part of this, and they're also just spending money to all these lobbyists in the NAB to get to the politicians so they don't have to pay more. Because, of course, there's some kind of a structure there that radio stations don't care about paying the musicians for what they're playing as content, nor do they care about the talent that's playing the music for that audience. And it's still possible, they say, that the House Judiciary Committee will advance the proposed royalty bill out of committee where Chair Gerald Nadler has been a strong advocate. If enacted, the bill would require radio stations that fall under $1.5 million in annual revenue, or whose parent companies make less than $10 million in annual revenue, to pay $500 per year in performance royalties, or less than $2 a day. And smaller stations would pay $10 a year if they're making less than $100,000 a year in revenue. But of course, all these radio stations, the radio companies, they don't want to pay this. And that's not to mention what happened last week with the FCC. And I talked about the story where FCC wants to go and charge, another extra $1,000 or so in fees every year, increase the fees to these radio stations. Well, listen, man, maybe people don't have to be the ones that own these radio stations. There are other people that will buy these off of you, program them, create better, like unload the stations. Okay. What needs to happen is all these stations need to be unloaded. These major, big monopolistic radio companies, they need to drop their stations and let somebody else run them. That's what needs to happen. Because this right here, what they're doing is not serving anybody's purpose. And that's the problem. Radio continues to keep getting a cop-out. They keep getting bailed out of all this shit right here. When the truth is, why are they being protected? What are they getting out of this? Right? So we have this story that continues to be a part. The Local Radio Freedom Act and National Association of Broadcasters doing what they're going to do. They're finding their way around to continue to keep these radio companies. Like, they're not helping the radio talent. They're not helping the musicians or the artists. They're not helping anybody but themselves, their bottom line. Whatever little bottom line they can make, and be able to go ahead and just ferret off and sell off assets of all these different companies. Whatever they have, whether it's the billboards, whether it's the live music, whether it's whatever. And of course, the government's not going to make any changes to regulate. And they're not helping anybody by not, if they're so good at taxation, why can't they get this part either? I don't know. And so radio, for whatever reason, keeps getting a pass on everything. And you know who's one of the people that always gets a pass, and nobody gets called to the mat for what they've done? Every time this guy talks, the person I'm going to talk about. If you've heard this show long enough, you know who I'm going to talk about now. A certain radio executive, the CEO of iHeartMedia, yes, Bob Pittman. He decides to open his mouth again. And he wrote a story a few weeks ago. I didn't get a chance to get to it until now. And the story is titled, Radio is the Real Media Unicorn. He wrote this, by the way. He said, who said streaming won the war? Radio is still a powerful contender and among the most popular and most trusted media channels. So he starts off and says, okay, da-da-da-da. Basically about his career, start off. In 2022, radio continues to reach more Americans every month than any other platform. We've heard that over and over. So what keeps us tuning into broadcast radio? And he writes this in lieu of National Radio Day, which happened on August 20th. He wanted to talk about how far it has come and what cultural and human factors continue to drive the enormous popularity and sticking power of radio. Specifically, the accessibility, companionship, and discovery that radio uniquely offers that other mediums can't replicate. Well, number one is accessibility. But people are not retaining this content. I don't know a lot of people these days that are turning on their radio to AM, FM, when they actually can go to their dash and they can go ahead and open an app to something else. He writes here, he really says this, radio is easily accessible on numerous devices, today from clock radios. Who has a clock radio anymore? Clock radio? Clock radio? Wow. To digital devices like phones and smart speakers that put radios in our hands and homes in new ways. Second thing he says that radio has popularity and sticking power is companionship. Whether you're listening while you're cooking, driving, working, or simply relaxing, radio hosts keep you company and offer personal connections that other mediums can't. But you mean the ones that are voice tracking? I don't know many that are live. How many are there live and local when you're cooking for dinner? You know, the ones that are around after 7 o'clock, or are they all syndicated? Come on, Bob. Come on. He does cite a lot of statistics. He says radio personalities are pioneers of the influencer economy we live in today. Majority of listeners listening that their favorite radio hosts have influenced their opinions and purchasing decisions. What kind of audience are you talking about there, Bob? Like, how old is that demographic? Are you talking about the 50 plus that are out there? Huh? Because the people that I notice that I watch, there's not a lot of young radio people that I watch on a regular basis on TikTok or other places. Like I got, who was it, JD, who's working 95.7 in Denver. I forget what station that is over there. Top 40. Carol Miller at Q104.3 in New York, formerly at WPLJ and among other stations, WNEW. Or Broadway Bill Lee, who works at WCBS FM. Like, who else are we talking about on radio there, Bob? That's got an audience, and they're influencing decisions. I mean, I understand he's being delusional. I mean, he is delusional. But he really feels like this is a story you could have written 20 years ago and said the same thing. Now, he says this about streaming. Experience that radio provides versus streaming platforms is distinctly different but complementary to that of a streaming music playlist service. Listeners trust their favorite radio stations to curate new music that fits their taste. What stations are playing new music there? Are you talking about new music that got curated through Mediabase and takes like 6 to 9 months before it finally gets played on a regular station? I mean, the new music that, you make sure you get a kickback from the artists that you have on there because they have to play at your venue, so they have to do something for you. And of course, you want to put them front and center because you're involved in the promotion and being a part of the live events of these artists in the first place, right? You want to make sure they get to your iHeartRadio Music Festival, don't you? Odyssey live events, whatever, right? You want that, don't you? Think of it this way. Digital streaming is today's version of listening to a record or CD collection. No, it's not, Bob. Far from it. You cannot create a record or CD collection. Elton John might be the only one that has a record collection that big that can resemble a Spotify playlist or Spotify playlist. That's completely ridiculous. That's a ridiculous statement. Sometimes you want to tune out of the world and listen to your favorite songs, but after a while you want to rejoin the world and hear a friendly voice you trust to connect to. And no, I don't. Like, I will listen to other stations around other countries in the world or other, formats, whatever. But it's for the music, discovering new music. It's not for the talent. Who do we have out there that really draws that big an audience? And it's constantly, the Breakfast Club? That's one example. Wait, what else? What else you got? Anybody? It's podcasters. They're the ones that are going viral. And they're not on AM, FM radio. No, they're not. And then he says artists rely heavily on broadcast radio to break new music to the masses to form fan bases. Who? Let me look at your media base hits daily double chart. The top 40 media base artists. How many of these are coming out that are building audiences? All right. If they're not established stars that you created, that you're a part of, that's sort of part of a big marketing machine, they're one-offs. Let me repeat, one-offs. Let's go to the example. All right, top 10. Harry Styles, he's established. Okay, he's got 2 songs, number 1 and number 3 on media base with As It Was in Late Night Talking. Lizzo, she's established. Post Malone, he's established. One Republic, Jack Harlow, Beyonce, Doja Cat. They're all established artists. Who in that top 10 is not? Okay. Kate Bush running up that hill. You had to play that because you had no choice because the song got viral and you were so late to the party in the first place. Nicki, Your Sunroof, which will be a one-off. It's a TikTok hit. And that's it. Nobody else on this list, by the way. Nobody. And then they say that artists celebrate making it when their first hit is put on the radio for the first time for the world to hear. I don't even know where this guy is coming from. I'm sorry. Maybe it's been a little while since I've been in radio, but Bob Pittman is out of his mind. But he knows what he's saying. He knows this is not true. Okay? Let's just put it like that. He goes on the right, and this is the most laughable part. Although the media landscape has changed dramatically since my early days as a radio announcer, broadcast radio continues to not just survive, but thrive for one very clear reason. No other medium can match what radio can offer. Can I repeat that again? No other medium can match what radio can offer. Layoffs, limited staffing, voice tracking, the same music over and over, and 14 to 16 minutes of commercials every hour. Okay. And very limited revenue, by the way. And by the way, your company is still in the red. You were given the chance to bail out of Chapter 11 bankruptcy with $20 billion in debt to be left with what, like $5 or $6 billion now? To allow yourself to be publicly traded once again. And then he says that radio remains the most accessible, affordable, and inclusive medium, keeping it relevant and within reach at all times for all. Yeah, it's free. That is true. But you're not offering quality content. And you're not even in touch with what digital streaming is doing anyway, what YouTube is doing. And just wait till Amazon Music's AMP service gets out there in full force. Imagine that. You know what's funny? There are music shows on TikTok now, live streams from people that are on there that are getting tens of thousands of listeners, which I'm sure many of your stations are not getting in the night parts. Nighttime drive or overnights. You're not even getting that. It's so funny what he wrote here. It really is. It's pitiful. It's pathetic. But he doesn't care. It doesn't matter to him. Nothing like an op-ed from Bob Pittman to get me all worked up, right? Hey, thank him for doing that for me, because I could always use that kind of something just to wake me up, something that even gets me more pissed off after I get a cup of coffee, all right? podcast listening has a lot of stats going on these days. Listeners are revealing the plus and minus. New Voodoo released a survey of what podcast consumers think about the medium, with mostly positive results. 65% of listeners say if they listen to podcasts, they feel smarter. They either feel more curious, better informed, or smarter. Podcasting's one-to-one model allows shows to focus on a niche, something that listeners very much liked about the medium. Strong interest across a variety of genres like true crime and comedy, self-help, and managing money, not far behind. And look, I get to do 3 shows myself. This show on the media, which there was not much of anything like this on AM, FM radio, or on podcasting for that matter. So I figured this is me being Norman Vincent Peale, finding a neat affiliate. And then I have my Depraved and Debaucherous show I talked about earlier, which is basically self-help. And my Wrestling is Real podcast, of which wrestling is quite a niche of podcasting out there, which I couldn't even tell you how many shows are out there regularly. Another thing they say is that more people are more likely to listen to the car and are more likely to have a connected dashboard system. 39% of podcast listening is done through headphones. Podcasts are a topic for listeners. Word of mouth recommendations remains one of podcasting's best discovery tools. Nearly 3 in 5 say they learned about podcasts from friends, and 2 in 3 have recommended a podcast to a friend. And recommendations are more important among heavy podcast listeners. 3/4 of people who listen to 10 or more hours of podcasts per week have learned about new shows from friends. And then they mentioned this story, which is why can't be radio. Radio doesn't have this. Network podcasts get listening, but there's room for independent producers, grassroots. Yep. They say there are 2.4 million podcasts out there, but the data shows the market is a long way from saturated. There's still lots of room for the indies with something to say. 21% say they don't pay for podcasts, when most do, at least indirectly. And nearly as many say they never have enough time to listen to all the podcasts in their queue. Right? Think about this. 49% of those said there are too many podcasts. And the other one, 61% say there are too many shows. 57% say they never have enough time to listen to all the podcasts in their queue. Okay, let me just put this point here. All right. That 57% percentage right there is key. As a podcast pro, as king of podcasts here, I must tell you, be cognizant of the time your audience has. Okay? You want to be able to have them be able to take a podcast episode of yours, be able to listen to it from front to end in one shot, optimally. So for me, I'm doing my shows like I do, where this broadcaster's podcast is an hour long. I'm about to finish up the hour and I'm going to stop. I got 3 more minutes. But when I do other shows like my Wrestling is Real podcast, I keep it an hour long as well. Unless there's something else that goes on where there's just too much to add in and I have to cram it in, and I'll go a little bit over an hour. And then my Depraved and Debaucherous series, I do a full-length episode, 30 minutes long. That's it. And I do 2 episodes in between that are each about a couple of minutes, maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes at the most. And that's how I keep that pretty much steady for everybody out there. With advertising, 63% said they're hearing too many commercials, and across all listeners, 54% said that too. But people will listen to commercials when the host endorsements come into play. And the data showed how podcast advertising works. 2/3 of podcast listeners said they had taken some action after hearing a podcast ad. I'm one of them. There's a lot more to think about that, but that's a few more things to bring up there. 2 other things I want to bring up. The thought about podcasting trying to reach 1 billion listeners. Podcast movement in Dallas was last week. And they had a panel session that talked about this. And the iHeart Media Senior VP of Custom Podcasts, Andy Kelly, mentioned that To get the next billion listeners, you have to create and make current podcasts available in other languages than English. He said that, well, another person, head of marketing for Spreaker, says we're trying to enable growth through monetization in other markets. It's not fair if creators are not getting paid the same amount of money, and at the moment they're not. And then they're talking about also Latin America being a key growth spot for podcasts. And then to reach the global audience, they say content remains king. Whether international or domestically, the formula shouldn't be different. We think about the impact that sound can make. We build audiences through great content, whether it's English or any other language. That's the secret sauce. According to Andy Lipset, CEO of short-form audio content, Creator Spoken Layer. There was a story from Business Insider saying that Spotify is looking at YouTube as a competition to them for podcasting. And YouTube is now taking steps to be much more conducive to podcasting. And many podcasters are filming videos of their shows to reach audiences on YouTube. And they mentioned many things that also contribute to that, where Gen Z is attracting more YouTube podcasts. More Gen Z folks are watching podcasts on YouTube. YouTube has a great, their features of ad and algorithm features appeal to creators, among other things. Finally, one story that I saw last week that I thought was interesting, because now we're seeing a little bit of the technology and audio content stepping forward. Audio Burst debuting a feature that will sell podcasts and radio content as NFTs. So Audio Burst has created a Finder widget. Listeners can visit the site of their favorite podcast using the company's proprietary audio search tools to find content and purchase the NFT using a credit card and the button located on the widget. And they're talking about how transforming audio clips into NFTs is a natural extension of their existing core of audio discovery capabilities. Listeners take ownership of audio content that they connect with while supporting their favorite podcast and radio hosts. NFTs. Interesting. So there's money to be made out there for you content creators. You just got to keep in mind about it. And you know what? We'll probably bring that up on the next Broadcasters podcast. But until then, I got to run. Hour's up. Until then, remember that content is king. And the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.